Mathis hesitated a moment and then said,
"Me too."
"Call it off."
"I can't."
"Your information could be wrong."
"It often is."
Mathis looked hard into Bond's eyes and then grinned with a sardonic gleam in his eyes. Bond's old friend was being stubborn. Bond studied Mathis's eyes. He and Mathis had a long history together. The Frenchman had even saved his life once. He owed the man a lot. Bond had to trust him and his organization. The logic behind the plan seemed sound enough. For some time, Mathis's outfit, the DGSE, which had swallowed up the old 2e Bureau years ago, had been gathering reliable intelligence on the whereabouts of Union arms depots ever since France had been the target of a Union bombing spree. No doubt the criminal organization had been funded by one of the country's independently minded terrorist groups, for the Union purportedly never took political sides. They were only in it for the money. And made money they had. In the last 3 years they had grown from a small group of terrorists and mercenaries based in Morocco to an international network of criminal enterprise. The Union's mysterious leader, le Gerant, remained an enigma, and his location was unknown. The organization had moved its headquarters out of Morocco over a year ago. Discovering its current location was the priority of several nations' law enforcement divisions. The CIA, FBI, SIS, DGSE, and Mossad had declared the Union to be the world's most dangerous threat. It was true that Bond had no small reason to hate the Union. He had been involved in 2 of the syndicate's more dangerous schemes and had personally been the target of one of them. The Union had been responsible for the deaths of several people Bond had been close to. He had seen the organization stop at nothing to invest time, energy, and manpower into seemingly impossible stratagems that ultimately ended in the destruction of its target and the immediate satisfaction of its current employer. At SIS, it was known as the New War, meaning that the conflict between the Union and the world's law enforcement and intelligence agencies had become akin to a war with an unfriendly foreign power. As in a real war, guerrilla tactics were used to gain information and strike at the enemy. Known safe houses all over the world for both sides were bombed, lives were lost, but money talked and agents were turned. Retaliations were frequent. In 7 months, the new war had reached a stalemate. Finally, word had come from Mathis. When Bond had learned in Morocco that le Gerant might possess a Corsican surname, all investigations had focused on France and her headstrong island in the Mediterranean. Bond re-established contact with Mathis, who normally worked out of Paris. As it happened, the DGSE had placed Mathis, once the head of the 2e Bureau, on its own Union task force. Thus, the 2 old friends were able to share information. One of Mathis's agents had been following the trail of Julius Wilcox, known to be one of Le Gerant's top lieutenants, or commandants, as they were called in the Union's inner circle. Wilcox was reportedly working with Union arms dealers operating through Western Europe. He had been sighted several times in the Côte d'Azur, mostly around Nice and Cannes, and occasionally in Monaco. When his movements were traced to the old Bisset film studios in West Nice, the DGSE convinced SIS and the CIA that the Union was storing illegal arms there. Until quite recently, the film studios had only been in partial use. Originally constructed in 1927, they had been the home of many famous motion pictures. But after the heyday of the 60s, the studio facilities had fallen into disrepair and were now terribly outdated. Most of the buildings, long abandoned, stood rotting on the lot. Only areas essential to small films currently in production were kept functional. A well-known French film producer and director had purchased the studio a month ago. Mathis had told Bond that although the man was a celebrity, the DGSE were keeping their eyes on him. Léon Essinger, an influential but controversial figure in French cinema, had a rather shady past. Mathis had spent some time attempting to link Essinger to the Union, but had come up empty-handed. At any rate, with Essinger's purchase, the film studios, now renamed Côte d'Azur Studios, were scheduled to see a vast facelift within 2 years. Commandant Malherbe appeared and whispered to Bond and Mathis. "I have the go-ahead. This is it, gentlemen. Are your vests secure?" Bond tugged at his bulletproof vest and replied, "Mine's secure, but I'm just an observer, remember?" He smiled at the French officer. Mathis said, "Commander Bond is concerned about the number of innocent..."